Joining us on the line right now is the Hall of Famer, and you see him a lot on NFL Network, NFL analyst, Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner, joining us here in hour number 3 of the program. Kurt, thanks for making some time.
You got it. You got it. Good to talk to you guys. I know things are exciting out there in Buffalo, so it's good times and happy to be with you.
Absolutely. Thanks. And we want to ask you, too, I know you've got a big family. How have you been doing during the pandemic? I know you've tested positive a couple of times. Tell us about how has that gone for you and how has you and your family weathered that?
Yeah, we know, Steve, that we're more blessed than most. And so we've been able to handle it and kind of stay in our own little area and try to keep ourselves safe and keep everybody else safe. And, there's always challenges with everything, especially with kids and teenage kids. So the social part of it has been a bit of a struggle for all of us. But overall, we're pretty good. And as you said, I tested positive just a few weeks ago, dealt with some symptoms, worked my way through it. It wasn't horrible, but it also wasn't a joke either. So I definitely felt it. But I feel great right now. Like I said, it's been about 2 weeks since I tested, and I'm feeling really, really good at this point and worked through, most of it. And hopefully there'll be nothing that lingers moving forward.
Well, all our best to you and your family. I hope you guys continue, and I hope your family stays healthy after you getting it. It's good stuff. I appreciate it. And thanks for taking some time to come on with us. I got to ask you about, you were an MVP in the league. You've won a Super Bowl. You took the Cardinals to the Super Bowl. What have you seen in Josh Allen's play this year? Certainly it's been a surprise for a lot of people, even for us. I mean, we watched the guy all last year. We thought, well, maybe if he got to 63%, completion rate, you know what I mean? Right. And threw for 300 yards like maybe 3 or 4 times during the season would be a step forward, but nothing like this MVP conversation that he's put himself into. What's your take on Josh Allen this season?
That is one of the hardest things, because I've always said it's really hard to become dramatically more accurate. You don't see very many guys that'll go from being a 58, 59% passer in college and then early in their pro career and all of a sudden jump up to like the 68, 69 range where Josh Allen is. So it's been really, really impressive. The one thing that I've always liked is that I think Josh has a good base, which I think the base is so key to being accurate as a quarterback. I still think he's got some work to do. There's often times where his feet don't come with his arm, but he's able to get away with so much because he's got that laser arm. But I just see a quarterback that's playing really, really confident. And that becomes a huge key in anything from wins to success to completion percentage. It's being confident in what you're seeing, where you're throwing it, and letting it rip. And you guys have a quarterback that is playing really, really confident football. The question becomes, when you have such a dramatic change from what he was early to what he was this year, is this the Josh Allen we're going to see the rest of his career? Or is this one of those, in the bubble type seasons where everything comes together and he has that MVP type season? We've seen Cam Newton with one of those seasons. We've seen Matt Ryan with one of those seasons. Then they kind of level out and they are what they are most of their career. And so I think that's the exciting part right here, is what is Josh going to be moving forward? Because if he can give you this kind of play throughout the rest of his career, man, it is going to be fun to watch. He is going to be able to challenge a guy like Patrick Mahomes year in and year out. And I'm excited to see what that looks like. And you guys know, you add a few talented pieces and maybe one specific talented piece in Stephon Diggs, who is a big-time playmaker. And that can go a long ways to building the confidence of your, signal caller, giving you the belief that you can go out there and make plays and take chances that maybe you wouldn't take with other guys. So a lot of things I think have come together, but I'm really excited not only to see them play this weekend against Patrick Mahomes and company again, but to see what they're going to be and what Josh is going to be for the next 10 years.
Kurt, I don't know how close you've paid attention to, personnel usage and that kind of stuff here in Buffalo, but, the Bills, I think, are second in the league in the usage of 10 personnel. And with good reason. I mean, they go 4 deep at receiver. I mean, they like their guys. So you understand it. And I know you were able to kind of spread the field when you were in St. Louis with all the guys that you had. What kind of power, kind of playing off what you were saying a little bit with Stephon Diggs there, what kind of power does that kind of give the quarterback when, you have a myriad of options, and you almost know in most given weeks, most defenses don't go that deep at corner. And when you can put 4 guys out there, what kind of power that gives the quarterback?
Well, there's no doubt, because a big part of this game is believing that when the defense dictates a certain matchup to you offensively, that matchup can win for you. You know, there's some teams that say, well, I can win with my 1 and I can win with my 2, but if they force me to go to 3 and 4, now it's a little more iffy. When you've got 4 guys, and as you said, lots of teams struggle with having the depth in the secondary to cover 4 guys. When you got 4 guys that you have confidence in at the wide receiver spot, it really challenges every defense. And once again, we go back to that confidence as a quarterback. When you feel like, hey, number 3 and number 4 are just as good of options for me as 1 and 2, when you look at who they're matched up against, that gives you great confidence to say, okay, defense, pick your poison. Where do you want to go on this play? Because I've got somebody that can beat you. And, you know, and a big part of this game is playing to your strengths. What are your strengths? How are you built as a team? You know, when I was in Arizona, that was another situation. You know, my weapons weren't necessarily talked about as much as with the Greatest Show on Turf, but we were more built to play 4 wide receiver football. And that's what we did when we went to the Super Bowl in 2009, is we went a lot of 4 wide receiver stuff because we felt that gave us an advantage against the Steelers defense. And so that becomes a big part of this play is, you know, how does it give you an advantage against the defense you're facing? But maybe more importantly, how are we built to have the most kind of success? And, you know, the other thing for a Josh Allen, you know, I always felt like, hey, if you just let me throw the ball 3 times, I'll get you a first down. And they're kind of in that mode right now where it's we're not even thinking about handing the ball off. Yeah. If we're going to run it, I'll run it myself. Otherwise, give me 3 opportunities, and I believe I can make a play for you in those 3 opportunities to keep the drives going. And so it's a great place to be as a quarterback when you know ball's going to be in your hands. They have confidence in you to give you opportunities to make plays, and that's exactly what he's done most of this year.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because Josh Allen seems to be in that, and we know Pat Mahomes is in that spot where they'll let him. Andy Reid said every down's a throwing down, and even so, even on a 4th and inches last week with a backup quarterback, it turns into a throwing down. Both these clubs come in, and I think, we've seen it before where you get a team like the Greatest Show on Turf, and I can't think of another team in the league at that era, but here in this era, teams you got to find a way to beat the Chiefs, and this team in Buffalo seems to be like, well, let's try and look just like the Chiefs. You know, run it right. And so Pat Mahomes is playing at a high level. It seemed to me, and you tell me your thoughts, because you were with a great team like that as well. The Chiefs won 11 out of 12 or something like that coming down the stretch.
Well, yeah, and they handed them the
week 17 away with. So they really did, and I'm not just saying this. It looked like they had another gear they never needed for 2.5 months. Now that's how good they are. What does it take to beat a team that's playing with that kind of confidence?
Yeah, it's tough because that team believes they're invincible. And, you know, I think the thing with the Chiefs, too, is they know that things can go against them and they can still win. And that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges for everybody that plays against the Chiefs is there's never a chance to take a deep breath and go, we got a 14-point lead. All right, we can just settle in and play. You're always playing on edge when you're playing against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, especially after what we saw in the playoffs last year. You know, down 24 points, down double digits in each of those games, and they find ways to come back. So that's the other part if you're the Bills is, yeah, you believe you can go swing for swing with them, but you're always going to be playing on edge, and that's not a good place to play. You want to be able to play free and just go out there and do what you do. But you always know who's on that other sideline when you're playing against the Chiefs. And that's going to be a big challenge. You know, you got to keep your intensity up. You can't take a deep breath. You know, when something does go again, you can have a 14-point lead and you still feel like you have to score every time you touch it. So then if you have to punt, now all of a sudden in the back of your mind, you're going, oh, shoot, we gave them an extra possession. We had to punt and we know who's over. And so you start playing the game a little bit differently against this Chiefs offense. And, you know, we always talk about it. There's the physical part of the game, and there's always the mental part of every game. That is a mental hurdle that everybody that plays against the Chiefs has to be able to jump over.
I don't believe, Kurt, there were too many times in your career where while with the same franchise, you had to change coordinators. Obviously, Martz was your head coach, so that didn't really change for you there. But just looking at it for Josh here, it looks like Brian Daboll is going to stay put. He's not going to land a head coaching job this offseason. And Steve and I were kind of talking about the times when, you know, the K-Gun offense here in Buffalo lost Ted Marchibroda and he went to Indianapolis, and how much the dynamics changed with a new play caller. Just in your experience from going to different teams and having different play callers, how dramatic a shift is that for the quarterback to try to keep it all together and maintain it? Because I have to believe that with Daboll staying in the fold another year, it will allow this team to continue the ascent of its current trajectory.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And, you know, the thing about it is that there's a lot of great play callers, play designers, guys that are really smart football guys. But I've always believed that there's a true connection that needs to be had between your quarterback and your play caller in terms of why you do what you do, why you call the plays that you call. Do you both see the game the same way? Is that, you know, you can have a quarterback drop a great play that he loves, and you can have a coordinator drop a play he loves, and they can look at him and go, I don't really like that one. Even though it might be a great play and a play that the other person has had great success with, seeing the game the same way is so vital. And so when you find that relationship, it's so important, I think, to keep it together if you can, because not everybody will see the game the same way you see the game. And that becomes a distinct process of being able to figure that out. So when you figure that out, you do feel like, hey, we can just hit the ground running next year and we can build off of what we've done this year. And you know me and I know you and I understand what we're trying to do. And man, now let's just keep ascending. When you have to, you know, stop that, and then you have to kind of start over, or you have to hope that the next guy sees the game the way your quarterback does. You know, that can be a really tough process. And sometimes you can get there, and other times I think you never get there between a certain coordinator and a quarterback. And it can be the difference between, you know, competing at this level, competing for championships, and just being a good football team because you have good talent.
Also, both coordinators in Buffalo, Leslie Frazier is also on the radar for a lot of teams. It's been struck me a couple of times, and particularly the Chiefs game in Week 6, the Bills really invited the Chiefs to run, and Edwards-Helaire had like 161 rushing yards. They rushed for 240 overall. I mean, the Bills almost took back Mahomes and just said, listen, you're not going to throw it and beat us. You can hand it off and beat us. And they got it done, no question about it. And then this last week, the Bills really kind of sold out. Listen, we dare you to throw it. We dare you to throw it. In fact, if you want, you can throw it to the wideouts all you want, but you're not throwing it to Andrews, and you're not throwing it to any of your running backs. And, you know, we're going to sell out to, you know, they went 100% in on both those game plans. Yeah. One, they won in the divisional round against Baltimore. The other, they lost against Kansas City in Week 6. But that kind of game plan that becomes so obvious, sometimes it becomes obvious after the game is over. What do you expect in this matchup do you kind of have to sell out like that against a Chiefs team? Because if you sell out one way, it seems like they still have an extra gear with their left hand, right? It's a tough matchup.
And that's what good teams have, right? You know, I often say that, you know, you got to be able to win different ways, especially in the playoffs, if you're a good football team. You know, you got to win away from your strengths sometimes. And the Chiefs have shown the ability to do that, to win with their defense at times, to win with their running game at times. But if I'm the Bills, I want them to have to beat us that way again. I want them to have to be patient. I want them to have to work the ball down the field and find themselves in numerous third down situations in hopes that we can just pull out a stop here or there. And I think if you looked at that last game, you know, I mean, there was a lot of weather, and it changed, I think, the complexion of how the Bills played as well. Is that I think if the Bills, if you look back at that game and say, hey, if we can hold the Chiefs to what we did last time, we feel like we've got a chance if Josh and company are going well and you know, the conditions play to us playing our brand of football. We'll take that slow death and keep it in the mid-20s, and we feel like we can win that game. We just don't want it to be a track meet. And really, I mean, the Bills, I feel they say that we can win a track meet too. They're built that way. But I just think against the Chiefs, you don't want to have to go swing for swing with Patrick Mahomes. He's just that good and has shown himself to be the best of the best. And you just don't want to have to do that. So I'd like the slow death. keep it in the mid-20s, hope we can get a stop or two or maybe a mistake or two, and then Josh Allen and our guys can exploit that and make those extra plays that get us the win this time around. I would think that would be their approach once again, if you're able to do that, which isn't always easy against a good football team. But if you're able to force them to have to beat you that way, I think you would want to do that again.
Talking to Hall of Famer and NFL Network analyst Kurt Warner. And Kurt, I've been asking a lot of the people that we've had on the show to peer into your crystal ball a little bit with respect to the AFC, because, you know, Steve and I kind of look up and down the divisions at the end of the year, and it just struck us how many good young quarterbacks are in the AFC right now, and they're going to be getting another one presumably in Trevor Lawrence, knowing Jacksonville has the first pick. But whether it's Justin Herbert out west with Patrick Mahomes in the AFC West, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, Tua, Joe Burrow, I mean, Lamar. I mean, you just run down the list. There's probably 9 or 10 really good young up-and-coming quarterbacks in the conference. Peer into your crystal ball a little bit to just maybe give us an idea on how competitive this conference can be over the next handful of years with all of these guys seemingly on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, you know, this is kind of one of those catch-22s, because you're right. You see a lot of really talented quarterbacks. But I will still say Patrick Mahomes, to me, is well above and beyond all of them. Now, the way Josh played this year, if he continues on that trajectory, he looks to be a guy that can challenge Mahomes. But I need to see more of that from all of these guys. You know, I need to see that they can play at that level consistently, because I believe Patrick Mahomes will play at that level through the entirety of his career. And bottom line in this business is you got to have one of those guys, and you're going to have to be in the AFC able to go swing for swing to some degree with Patrick Mahomes for the next decade. And so as good as these young quarterbacks are, I don't know if there's one that I feel like can consistently play at that level to hold Patrick Mahomes down, or at least keep Patrick Mahomes off of that, you know, that AFC pedestal, you know, for a decade. Now, I hope, because that's what it's all about, I hope that these guys all take that step and show us they can be that guy. And if so, my goodness, you guys are right. I mean, if all these guys can come into that realm, and, you know, we could see different teams competing for championships every single year in the AFC if they do that. But again, he is a different beast in Kansas City right now. And I just don't know. I mean, Lamar, he's played great. He won an MVP. You know, maybe he can compete one year. You know, Josh, this year, he's competing at this level. That's 1 year. But I believe Patrick Mahomes is going to be there every year. So you've got to show me you can be that guy year in and year out, regardless of the circumstances. And as good as the AFC is in terms of young quarterbacks, I think there's a big drop-off from Patrick to all the other guys. And again, I'll leave that caveat there with Josh, that Josh, this year, it isn't that big of a drop from Patrick Mahomes. But can he be that guy year in and year out after what we've seen early in his career to what we've seen this year?
Last one from me, Kurt. You played on a couple of different squads. You played. You had all those great years with St. Louis. You played for the Giants for a minute, and then you went to the Super Bowl again with the Arizona Cardinals. Deshaun Watson in Houston. They're the team that drafted him, and now they've made him angry. And and I get it. I mean, as a player, you know this, and I know this. When you feel like you've been lied to, that's almost a deal breaker. What do you think happens with Deshaun Watson in Houston?
You know, it is a tough one, because obviously there's, been some things that have, created a rift there between Deshaun and the organization. And that's never easy when you're talking about your franchise guy. But Houston can't let this guy go. I mean, you just can't. You just have to say, we have got to do and mend these fences and do the right thing moving forward to put pieces in place to make Deshaun happy again, because I couldn't handle that if I'm an organization and I would ever allow a guy like Deshaun that's shown us, because, you talk about guys that maybe can compete with Patrick Mahomes. He's shown us if you put the pieces around him, at least statistically, that he can do all of those things. So I just don't think Houston can let him go. But I don't know what it's going to take to mend these fences. I think Deshaun is a great young man. I think he is a pro. I think if he is a part of the Texans organization, you are going to get 100% of Deshaun Watson every time he shows up, which is all you can ask for. And I think as an organization, you've got to take the steps to try to mend some of those fences. And I don't think that means go hire the guy that he wants as a head coach if you don't believe that's the right guy. But you do have to say the right things, do the right things, bring Deshaun in and have those conversations, those tough conversations, because I just don't think if I'm a Texan, I am going to let that guy go for any reason. But I've got to make sure that it works for the next 10 years. And how you do that with some of the fences and bridges that have been broken, I'm not sure. But I'm going all in if I'm the Texans to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Right. Last thing before we let you go, Kurt, I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of clear the air because I know there were some overly sensitive people on social media that thought you were throwing a dig at the Bills with regard to the weather conditions in the game, and that's not what you were doing at all. So maybe just clear the air so Bills fans have a better understanding exactly what you were getting at there.
Yeah, well, just for me, it's my personal opinion. What I love to see at playoff time is I love to see the best of the best. I want to see all of these great players in an environment that allows them to play their best. And so, although, on our show, the topic came up around the Bills-Ravens game, and you saw the weather and the 30 miles per hour winds and that sort of stuff. I just would like it to have every playoff game, every meaningful game in a dome with no elements where I can just say, I want to see the best of Josh Allen every time he gets on a football field. I want to see Justin Tucker, the greatest kicker maybe our game's ever seen. I want to see him make those kicks that I expect him to miss and not have to see the weather. I fully understand. Football, played in the weather, played in the elements. I grew up in Iowa. I loved playing in the snow and all. I understand that. But to me, at the highest level in the biggest games, I want to see our greatest players have the opportunity to play their best football. And I don't like things that they can't control. And that doesn't mean I don't understand home field advantage. But to me, a 30-mile-per-hour wind where Josh Allen overthrows his guys by 20 yards as he's fighting the wind, that's something that he can't control. And I know fans can sit back and say, well, you got to learn how to throw with 30-mile-an-hour wind. Steve, you understand. There is nothing to do when you put that ball up in the air and the wind takes it, it's gone. You can be a great kicker, but you can't always play the wind, or you can't, you hold the football that's wet and it slips out of your hands. It slipped. There's nothing to do about it. So that's really my point. And I know I played in a dome and all of that stuff. I just want to see our best players play their best football in the biggest moments and never have those other things factor in. And that was simply my point. It was just based on this game. I picked the Bills. I felt like the Bills were the best team. This was not a knock on really either side or any of that. It's just, to me, a big picture thing that I like because I want to see Josh Allen play at an MVP level in every moment, especially in the divisional round or in the championship round. And if there's a way to secure us being able to do that, I like that kind of football better. Some people like playing in the cold and the snow and the wind and all that jazz. That's just not my cup of tea. I want to see these guys playing at their best.
Kurt, thanks, man. It's great talking to you.
Always good to talk to you guys as well. Enjoy this weekend, and maybe we'll talk again if things work out well this weekend, and we're all heading to Tampa.
Perfect.
Thanks, Kurt, for the time. We appreciate it.